Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December quarterly meeting. For those in person, we are at the State of Utah ECC Emergency Coordination Center. And this is where most of the State Division of Emergency, or soon to be all State Division of Emergency Management people work as well. Today, we've got a bunch of presentations from our UMETT board members on a variety of topics. And then we're going to wrap it up with some updates and like some new cool stuff that we're doing with the hub site and kind of a call to action. I'm hoping to get some more interactivity with the rest of the group. So we're gonna start off with Savannah, and I'll let all of the presenters introduce themselves. And yeah, okay, let me go over your presentation.
Hey, I'm Savannah Mayu. I'm with the Unified Fire Authority, so I'm the GS specialist under them. So I help with any maps for not only the fire agency, but also Salt Lake County Emergency Management. We have a contract with them to provide emergency management services. So yeah, just to go. Yeah, so with incident mapping, we're just used to communicate critical information to incident personnel for effective response. A lot of it is just whether that's for incident personnel, but also for the public as well. So for example, on the left side here, that's an event map that we use for any events that we do at the Salt Air, because it is unincorporated Salt Lake County. So any events that go on there, like the EDM festival that you might hear about, we help a lot with those. Kind of the incident maps that we have here help a lot for where things are staged. So first aid, parking, if we did have to evacuate people, where would that be? Anything like that. And then in the middle here, there was an evacuation for a small area in South Salt Lake because of a gas leak. And so we use that to communicate information to the public on social media, but also if people did happen to go to the shelter that we had designated, we could quickly figure out if they were actually in the evacuation area, because there was a lot of confusion from the emergency alert that went out. And then on the right here, it's just a public information map about a fire. So it has like the division information, the fire perimeter, anything like that. It's really used to communicate information for the people in the field. And just to note, for all of these different maps, they're just meant to be quick. They're not always going to be perfect, but obviously when you're in an incident, there's a lot of different things going on. So it's really hard to get anything perfect anyway. So a lot of the map elements are similar to what you guys already work on, probably. So there's a lot of acronyms within emergency management, as you'll see, but a lot of the same things. So like scale, title, author, kind of similar map elements that you already work on, but also having templates for all these different things will help a lot. So you're not doing it on the fly. So I really encourage anyone who works for like a local jurisdiction or a county or even the state level or anything like that to have pre-configured map templates already made for different kind of maps that you need, like incident action plan maps or public information, things like that, because then you don't have to do it during an incident when people kind of want it right now. Another thing is symbology. A lot of the symbology that you typically use in an incident is going to be the same. And you can download those different symbology templates from the National Alliance for Public Safety. They have a lot of different ones for like hazmat or NIMS, any hazard kind of things that you'll see here, lifelines. And Esri also has downloadable templates that people can use. But that's good to do ahead of time, so it's already on your computer, and you can add it to different pro projects automatically, so that that can be applied to your map templates or like any project that you're working on. And as far as like project organization, it's really important when it comes to an incident, especially when for like reimbursement or if you get audited or if there's any kind of staff turnover internally. It's also just good to have like an archiving, so like a way to store this information over time with those different things happening, because once an incident closes, you might be audited, you might be asked, especially if it's tied to money, they might ask for all that information. So it's important to have kind of a file naming structure and a way to record that information over time for the entire incident. That was really a quick rundown, but there's my contact information if you need it. And if you have any questions, then you're free to ask here. But
Thank you, Savannah. I don't see any questions online. I tried to join separately, so oh gosh. Hold on. So I can see if there's any comments. And I don't see any, so we can hop over to Braden. And
All right, everyone. I'm Braden Norris. I'm with the Utah Division of Emergency Management. Official title is Private Sector Liaison, but I do a lot of work in regards to critical infrastructure, and so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So this is what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about what is critical infrastructure. We're going to define that here, look at some information sources that I have used to collect data. We're then going to talk about prioritizing infrastructure, and then also about supply chain mapping as well. So what is critical infrastructure? Just for the sake of how I look at it, I follow what the Department of Homeland Security, Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA defines critical infrastructure. They break it out into 16 different sectors of infrastructure, as you can see here on this diagram, but we'll dive into that a little bit more deeply here in a second. So when I am trying to identify infrastructure, there's a document that came out in 2011 called the Infrastructure Data Taxonomy. And what that does is it helps to, separate infrastructure into different groups. So this just helps me as I am looking at information sources. This helps me to identify what, section of infrastructure that this data is going to fall underneath. So along with that, like I mentioned, it helps with, data management, data discovery, and it helps when you are sharing information back and forth with different partners that you're also speaking the same terminology and the same lingo. So I said earlier, there's 16 sectors of infrastructure, but the government has lied to you. In that data taxonomy, they actually have 18 sectors of infrastructure. So the ones in white are the ones that they typically talk about, but they have, I guess, 2 red-headed stepchilds as postal and shipping and national monuments and icons that also fall under critical infrastructure as well. And so when we are looking at information sources, it's broken out into 5 things. So you have your infrastructure sector, you have its subsector, you have its segment, subsegment, and its asset level. This just helps you get down to the nitty-gritty details of infrastructure. I'll go back one. Will you go delete twice for me? And sometimes there are sectors of infrastructure that cross in between 2 different sectors of infrastructure. So if we're thinking about pipelines, they can be in transportation and they can be in energy as well if they're holding a petroleum product. So that's just a cross-sector sector of infrastructure. So we already talked about this. This is just going to help us to discover and organize our data, communicate clearly, and share the information effectively. Let's see, I'll skip this one. So here is how they break it down. So we can see it's a little blurry because I took a screenshot of the actual document, and because it's blown up, it's a little blurry. But you can see here we're looking at agriculture and food. That's its sector. Subsector is supply. Its segment is fruit and nut farms. And then down there further, it's like mushroom production, or other food crop growing. So it just breaks it down into further defined categories of infrastructure. But here at the state, I don't go past subsector, but the federal government has done this for us. And so on this next slide, just gives you some additional information of how that's broken down, but it does show you that cross-sector reference, and it also identifies something as NAICS codes. So NAICS codes, what the heck is that and where do you find it? So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they identify different businesses with different codes. And that's what a NAICS code is. It just lets you know what type of business this, infrastructure sector might be underneath. And when you go online, like I said, here at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they define that for you. So if you are ever looking for a specific type of business or industry, you can define it by NAICS code. And I promise all this will make sense when we get to the end. I just wanted to give you a background of how I'm looking at stuff. So a public source of information that I used to use was Highfield. And Hobie threw his hands up in the air, so did I. But back in August of this year, they decided to take it to the chopping block and get rid of Highfield. But before they did that, went in and scraped all the Utah data out of Highfield. Oh, hold on, Julie, you have to do something real fast. Let someone into the call.
Okay, just like,
It's getting started.
I know.
sorry.
All right, so Highfield's gone. I went in, I scraped everything that was infrastructure related for the state of Utah. I have that compiled on my end, and I told Julia is my goal this week to get that to her so she can put it on the UMETT website. So we have publicly available data that I scraped from Highfield. But because I got rid of Highfield, I don't know if they created this or if this was already in existence, but the Geospatial Information Infrastructure Database. Unfortunately, to get into this database, I think it has all of the Highfield data and more, but you do need a sponsor to get into the data set, which I do have a sponsor, and I know I sent the information to Savannah. Did that guy ever get back to you?
Yeah,
Awesome, so it worked.
Yeah, it worked. It was so, like, once I figured out the government chaos of trying to get set up, it went super smooth.
Awesome.
So,
Okay, so after this, if you want to get into GII, I have a contact for a sponsor that I can send to you. You just let them know, hey, that cool guy Braden from Utah said to reach out. And it sounds like it
so
worked.
nice. I'm
Awesome.
so excited to give people the data. So yeah, it was very positive about it versus some, oh, fine, I guess I have to do that. But yeah, he was great.
Good, awesome. So it's good to know people that know people. So that's another source that we can get, I guess it's not publicly available, but information sources for free. Another tool that I have access to here at the state is a business licensing database called Data Axle. They have a list of all business licenses for the whole nation. And on that website, you can categorize what you're looking for by the state, by the county, by the city, or you can look up those cool NAICS codes I talked about earlier that identify sectors of infrastructure and businesses. So for those who may be watching online, it's probably easier to see it, but I think I have like oil and pipelines or something like that. And so I just did that search for the entire state of Utah. It came up with 34 results. So if you need a list of all the businesses within your jurisdiction, feel free to reach out to me. I can pull that list for you, send it to you. And as long as that business has a business license, they're on here. It's not going to get you down to the nitty gritty of like utility information, but it gives you where the main office location is. So, along with that, we've talked about what critical infrastructure is, where we can get some data sources. Now I want to get into something the federal government has asked us to do with the Infrastructure Resilience Planning Framework. I believe the original copy came out in 2023, but it looks like it's been updated as of 2025 of this year. And in chapter 2 of that document, it talks about how the federal government would like us to identify critical infrastructure. So within this document, it wants us to identify infrastructure, prioritize infrastructure, and then identify infrastructure interdependencies. So that's what we're going to talk about next. This is a lot of what I do at the state. This is something that me and Julia built in an ArcGIS dashboard. I'm going to keep looking at her because I don't know all the lingo you people know. But what we did, we made this dashboard. You people, you mapping people, you're all great. I just don't know the terminology. So we built this dashboard, and in this dashboard, there are over 11,000 assets that I have found for the state of Utah that are identified as critical infrastructure within those 16 sectors of infrastructure that we talked about. And within this tool, we then break it down into subsector as well. And so you need to have an ArcGIS account. You have to be invited to the dashboard by Julia. And then once you do, we give you access to either just your jurisdiction, your county, or the entire state. And from there, there is editing access to go in and then prioritize the infrastructure. So there is a survey 1, 2, 3. What do you call it, an application? What do you call a survey 1, 2, 3 tool?
The survey.
The survey is attached to the dashboards on the bottom right. And depending on how you fill out the survey, all the questions are repeatable for every asset you're looking at. It doesn't matter if it's healthcare, energy, water. You're going to get the same questions across the board. That was our goal here at the state, is to have one repeatable process to prioritize infrastructure. And then after you fill out the location of the asset, what sector, what subsector, and then you fill out the questions in almost real time. It then populates in the dashboard, and you can then see how your city or your county or region, how the infrastructure compares to one another. And within this function, you can filter it by sector, subsector, by location, and then you have the ability to download the information that you just filtered through as a Excel document. So you can take it to your higher up people and say, hey, based on what's going on, this is our prioritized infrastructure. Here's the criteria. We've done it. It's going to make your job a lot easier. And so along with that, so we talked about prioritizing infrastructure. Now I want to talk about supply chain management. So there are 2 products that I've either heard of and or personally used. One of them is called the All Hazard Analysis Tool. It was developed by Idaho National Labs, but due to some legal hoopla we have to deal with here within the Utah Department of Public Safety, we had to rewrite our contract for how we could use this tool. It's a free tool that was given to the state. I'm not quite sure how many users I can have on it. This tool does not talk with ArcGIS, unfortunately. But within this tool, and also the other tool I'm going to talk about, you can then start linking the interdependencies of infrastructure with one another. So you can say, hey, I have a hospital in Murray. Here are all these substations that feed this hospital. This is where all the internet lines are. This is where the cell towers are. This is where its water comes from. This is where wastewater goes. And then within that tool, you can draw a polygon and simulate a disaster. And within that tool, it will show you all infrastructure that's being affected by the disaster, and then all infrastructure downstream that no longer functions because of the disaster in your area. It's a great tool. There's a lot of information that's already been pre-populated in the tool, so it's not like we're working from scratch. I got word last week that it's any day now that our commissioner will re-sign that, and we'll get it back to Idaho National Labs so we can have access to this tool. So if you're interested in this, like I said, I can't remember how many users can be in the tool because it was just me. But if you would like to understand supply chains or add information into it, I'm happy to add you into that. And then another product, which I don't have a screenshot up here, this is just the all hazards analysis tool, is a product that it's a non-profit, not-for-profit group that works with the federal government. It's the MITRE group. And actually the individual that I worked with to get access to the all hazards analysis tool is actually at MITRE. So that he reached out to me and said, hey, we have this product. It's mostly about floodplain mapping, but within that tool, it's in ArcGIS, you can link interdependencies like the all hazards analysis tool, but it is within ArcGIS. We don't have access to that. I had a meeting with them a week ago or so, but I have invited Julia and our floodplain mapping group to have a call with the MITRE group tomorrow at 8 a.m. So we'll get their feedback. I believe it's free. I hope it's free. So we'll have access to that as well. So another tool that we can use to map supply chains. And then these are all the references to what I talked about. So I didn't share a lot of data that you can get right now, but we're going to be able to get you this data. So if you're interested in any of the high field data, like I said, I'll get that to Julia. If you want the sponsor to get into the GII database, let me know. I'll connect you with my sponsor. And then if you would like to get access to our infrastructure prioritization tool, reach out to myself or Julia. We can get you in on that so you can see what infrastructure data we have collected for your different locations. And then if you want to be a part of mapping supply chains, I would love help. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Can you filter by county for the business license?
You absolutely can. You can do the county, you can do the city. You can even search on that business license database and say, who has the top revenue in my county or my city? Who has the most employees?
I'm curious. I know the data axle stuff feeds business analyst, which is now like basically included.
So Hobie was talking to me about this. So he said, do we want to spend $7,000 to keep data axle, or can we do what you just said?
Business analyst. We haven't tested it very rigorously yet.
So I haven't done it for anything that you guys are talking about, but I have used business analyst since it's become like creator level included or whatever. And it's pretty fantastic for like if you need to compare, I'm comparing 10 different sites at the moment, 26 different variables. It's very nice to just be able to see it all, like, and then the table will like sort them by color and everything. It's very, very useful. But
And that was business analyst, just the basic, not the.
That's not the advanced. No, I actually called Esri to see how much the advanced licensing would be to like make my own custom infographic, and that's like $5,000 a user. So I was just like, no, I'll just screen clip what I want out of this one. And
Well, we have it.
Take it to Canva and fix it from there.
well,
But when I was talking to Hobie with data axle, we have like a certain amount of credits we can use per year, which my credit limit is more than the entire state of Utah business licensing combined. So if we wanted to, we could just use all our credits, download everything, and then just leave and dip. Yeah, because our contract ends in February. So
Yeah, probably should do that.
yeah. So that's an option.
Okay, yeah, and then specifically compare, like, you can compare business analyst to what's in data axle is
Yeah.
something that we should take a look at next.
Do it. Okay.
it says so in like the documentation. It says the NAICS codes are straight from Data Axle is the provider of the data set to Esri for
There you go.
BA. Yeah,
So we could get.
because it tells you exactly who's giving them the data
Mhm.
or who's enriching the data in the demographic stuff, at least. I don't know.
And $5,000 is cheaper than $7,000. So if we did need to add in at least one advanced user,
We could buy UMETT merch.
we could roll that right in to our
$2,000
license,
for
because
DEM.
at present, at least, DEM is very friendly to any time we ask for more GIS stuff.
I would think for emergency management stuff, the tools that they have sitting for like businesses to create emergency management plans and stuff in the advanced licensing, I would assume is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
I just don't know. They never really show off any of like the crazier pieces to it. It's just like, okay, here's the
Here's the basic.
basic stuff.
We have it if you want to look at it.
Oh, you have the advanced.
I do.
Oh, no.
Sweet.
We need
Wow.
something.
Savannah's a cool kid on the block now.
That was
I don't know which kind I
I
have.
didn't think we were gonna get it, but we did.
An enterprise agreement, whatever comes with
We
that.
did.
Oh, sad.
Wait, you can't have enterprise?
We don't have enterprise now. We need it, but we don't.
Oh, that's right. Well, it's really expensive. I'm lucky, we're lucky that Josh put in all of that footwork before I got here to get that up and running, because it's nifty, so.
Yeah. Managing it is also a pain.
I sat on the phone with Esri for, or not on the phone, but like on a call with Esri for 6 hours. It was last time when we updated from 11.1 to 11.5. It took 6 hours to update.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it
And you had
also
to just put
matters
it-
how many cores you're on too. Like that's the
Yeah, and we're only on one core, so,
oh, they won't even. I think the minimum now for
Minimum
my
is
four,
four.
yeah.
yeah, the minimum is 4.
'Cause
But
we're
yeah, it's
still at
one, it's not, it's
10
I
not.
mean,
One.
four cores is
It-
especially if you have like very heavy workloads.
Yeah, no, it took a long time. It took a whole, and you can't really, and like, I could sit there and babysit it. But anyway, sorry.
Well, thank you, Braden.
Yeah, great job.
Are there any other questions for Braden online or anything? Or we feed right along to Ryan? All right. Okay, every single one of these is a different like mode. So,
Well, some of you guys work on Google, some of us work on
Okay,
Microsoft,
from
some of
beginning.
us work on Linux, maybe, I don't know. I know, so I only had one transition, I'm sorry. Okay, so,
Pulled off on the oohs and ahs.
I know, sorry. My name is Brian Bush. I'm a senior GIS analyst at Mill Creek City. I've been there for a little under 7 years. This will just focus on WUI mapping, House Bill 48, and the differences between the high-risk WUI and the local WUI, how to get into URAP, what data sets you can find in URAP, how to put it all in ArcGIS Pro, and then also just some kind of general information, as there's not a lot from the state legislature on like how to help your chief building official and all of the GIS needs that are going to come along with this.
could I interrupt you to say what the acronyms are?
Sure.
Just
Oh, so WUI would stand for a wild urban interface, wildland urban interface. And the URAP is going to be the Utah Wildland Reporting. I have it down here in a later slide, sorry. Sorry for all the acronyms. We'll get there. Just a little disclaimer, I'm not from the state. I don't work for the Forest Service. I don't work for UFA. And this is just a presentation for an open house in Mill Creek, a city council meeting in this. I have worked with all of those agencies while making this. And most of what you'll see here is just working products in ArcGIS Pro. And I would highly recommend meeting with your fire marshal and local fire authority to chat with them about how to make this map for your specific area. Next slide. Sorry. So what is a wildland urban interface? It is where human development and borders and intermingles with wildland vegetation. These are the highest risks of wildfire. They're usually found in the foothills above urban and suburban areas. And as communities expand into those areas, the interface grows and more infrastructure is placed at risk. Here's some recent fires impacting WUIs and why WUIs are kind of necessary. The Palisade Fire on the left, those are some pictures from Esri User Conference. The top one is the progression. And that's actually by like hour-and-a-half segments over like 2 days, just so you can see how fast the fire goes. Most of the blue and green is just January 7th. The intensity map below it shows the fire intensity. And then the Eaton fire, I had some other images here, but they actually have a full ArcGIS Align dashboard damage assessment where you can go through and see how far the fire burned down into Altadena, and then also images of every single structure that was affected by that. So when those fires happened at the start of 2025, the legislative session decided, hey, we got to do something here in Utah. We have a lot of wildfires as well. And so they passed this legislation that requires Utah cities and counties to adopt the Wildland Urban Interface Code by January 1st, 2026. And this WUI code establishes construction and defensible space standards for new buildings and remodels over 50% of value within these zones. So just like some building materials, fire-resistant roofing, you can't ember eaves, stuff like that. In the bill, it states that the local entity or government must define the WUI zone boundary and adopt a map while they adopt the 2006 International WUI Code, which has been adopted by the state. Kind of going to go through, because there's two things included in this, we'll go and show you. This is from Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands. They were tasked with creating a high-risk WUI boundary map as well. So they are using advanced software and modeling to come up with a structure exposure score to charge a fee based on square footage and risk in that area at a state level, and also to force insurance carriers to use that map when evaluating wildfire risk. The WUI mapping that locals and counties would have to do is more broad in nature, and it's specifically meant for construction codes and building standards to reduce the risk of wildfire. This is a great little image, and I'm glad that they sent this to me. So the backbone of all of that is going to be the Utah Wildfire Risk Assessment Portal, otherwise known as URAP, one of the many acronyms here. And that's going to be the official wildfire risk mapping platform. This was built, I want to say, a year or two ago, and they've started to doing for public awareness and education, and then also there's some advanced stuff so you can get data to make your own GIS. The basic viewer is available at that link there. You don't have to log in. It's just intended for public users and homeowners. You can type in your address and it will pull a score and kind of give you an overview of like what your wildfire risk is for your property. It has just 5 layers and just kind of some basic functionalities. To get to an advanced user license there, you just need to create an online account. This is kind of just the process of it. It did not take me very long. They say no governmental email required, but it is recommended. When you get into the advanced viewer, you now have access to a lot more data sets over on the left. You have challenges to fire operations, you have ember characteristics, flame front characteristics, and some other wildfire hazard stuff. You also have the ability to do measuring and drawing on your map, and also to export and print maps. Another part of that tool is going to be the ability to download all of the data. So you can define an area of interest, you can upload a shapefile, or you can select from a list that is pre-populated from, I don't know, whatever data set that they used from the consultant that made the application. Because my city boundary was not on there from 2017. So I put my own shapefile in, and then I added a half-mile buffer to grab the data that I wanted. It spits out a zipped file geodatabase and also a Word document. And kind of the Word document goes through each one of the layers and how they're kind of constructed and gives a good overview as well. Additional data sets that you can use to kind of help you in your process. The UGRC road data set is great. If you have building footprints, you can attach structure exposure scores to those building footprints. And then there's also a lot of historical WUI maps from the Forest Service, produces one every decade off census tract level. And then also some slope data if you have LiDAR in your area. Here's some of the historic stuff, and this is just in context to Mill Creek, so you can kind of see how it's missing a massive section of what would be pretty high-risk areas, not intermix. This is from Silvis Lab in Wisconsin, and they go off census block data sets, housing density and vegetation, and then kind of come up with a composite score of whether or not it's an intermix or an interface. It's just very course level. So, but it is useful to kind of see over time. This was the data set that I found when I started working at Mill Creek, which was the 2006 statewide mapping WUI project. I don't really know where it came from. It just was sitting in a geodatabase, and this is what we've been using for building codes until today. So moving along. Just kind of going through some basic stuff of like getting all of your URAP data in Pro, just opening up Pro, creating a new project. I would use a local folder. I would unzip that, and then I would, it contains the, unzip the file geodatabase, and you'll get all of the data sets. You can then add that to Pro and start adding all of the layers out of that. It also will include your buffer layer and your AOI polygon. All of the stuff from URAP is in UTM zone 12 at a state level. I just decided to keep it in that, even mapping like a state plane, but I just moved back to the UTM zone. Here's some of the rasters that are available and some of the rasters that I ended up using. Wildfire hazard potential. This is just the relative potential for wildfire occurrence and spread, fuels, topography, historic fire behavior, and other land fire inputs. It goes through very low to very high. It's just a 5, it's just classified into 5 categories. Next slide. Burn probabilities. These values are the given percent of the chance of burning during a given year. This can also kind of help you generalize polygons and see where like the bands are of like the most highest risk areas as well. Structure exposure scores. So after meeting with UFA, this is the data set that the state is driving the high risk data from. And so this is the data set that I ultimately ended up using to kind of classify and draw a WUI boundary for building code purposes. This is the relative hazard to a structure at any given location. It's in a fine grained value, but then those values are then categorized into a 1 through 10 scale. 5 being moderate risk, 6 being high risk, and 7 being very high risk. I think 8 through 10 is like extreme risk. And so the state is using SES of 7 and above to designate the high risk WUI boundary. For building code purposes, people said try to start at SES 5 and then kind of work your way closer to the 7s. And that's about that. Next slide. Here you can kind of see the raster values just on an unclassed version, and then also why reclassifying them is actually easier to get rid of the floating point. And so you can do raster to vector conversions and other zonal statistics. Zonal statistics inside the spatial analyst toolkit. You can calculate the dominant or average SES scores defined on zones like parcels. You could do subdivisions, evacuation zones, other things. I just wanted to see what the majority of the SES scores were per parcel. That's what I ended up choosing. There's kind of just the workflow of how to use that tool. Drawing a final WUI boundary. So I kind of grabbed all of those inputs and building footprints, roads, parcel boundaries, and I started to just draw. I created a new polygon class and I just started to trace some road center lines. I was wanting to include everything that would be in the high risk mapping from the state, and I also didn't want to split parcels. So I decided to use center lines here. And generalization where it would be better for maintenance and readability long term. So here's just some of the variations that we started with. This was the first variation, was using arterial and collector level roads with 60-foot widths, preferably near SES 5+ areas. And that actually encompassed about 2,000 properties. And so we then decided we don't want to include that many people. And so we came to variation B, which was much more selective and removed all of the SES 4 and 5 clusters, leaving mainly just the 6 and 7s. And then what was finally kind of came up upon was variation C, just to kind of get rid of a lot of the jogs, and also to include all the way out to the city boundary, where even though it's undevelopable, just for clarity. Here's some feedback from UFA and FFSL on the map. And after the map was made, here's some other things you can do with, as you kind of go along and create these things, how many structures are falling within the boundary? What is the distribution of those scores inside that area? All of these tools inside ArcGIS Pro exist, and they're quite easy to use. So summary statistics is really nice, especially if you use the near tool on building footprints off the structure exposure score rasters. And then you kind of have a data-driven justification for your boundary. This is how the classification goes inside the WUI, the local WUI for building stuff. So this is where GIS actually probably comes in more handy than the map itself, is that a lot of these things are GIS attributes, topography, vegetation, subdivision design, road access. This is per property. So when someone wants to build in a WUI in Utah, they'll have to fill out this appendix form, and it creates a score. And based on that score, you can come over to this table, and then those are the materials that you will have to use based on those scores. The scores, if you go back to the slide above, really have a lot to do with fire protection and just some basic stuff, and defensible space. So you can lower your score significantly just by doing some of the things in the following slides. Next slide. Getting a report as a resident from URAP, so I just kind of ran. This is Fortuna Park over in Mill Creek. And so I just put in the address, and this is kind of how it goes when you're just grabbing a report. It gives you a location wildfire hazard summary, uses a 45-acre area centered on the user location, gives you a color-coded map, kind of gives you guidance on creating defensible space zones. and also Firewise based recommendations such as like removing ladder fuels, pruning trees, etc. And here's what the PDF document looks like from URAP for the homeowner. So you can kind of see the little map of where the risk is for them. And then it gives you a little diagram of like what defensible space is and how to create defensible space. Final tips. HB 48 requires local WUI boundaries for building code enforcement by January 1, 2026. The URAP portal provides consistent statewide data to guide local decision-making, combining structure, exposure scores, local context, and wildfire hazard potentials can make meaningful boundaries. Your boundaries should be defensible and explainable, aligned to features like roads or parcel edges, and reviewed with local fire authorities. And that's it. Thanks for hanging in with me. Hopefully, that was long.
That was awesome, Brian. Are there any questions? I don't see any comments, but feel free to unmute, raise your hand, or anyone in the room, obviously. I did actually. How was the decision made? And I'm guessing that it wasn't really made by you for excluding the SES 4, 5, and 6, like in the old after the iterations.
So I never really wanted to include the SES 4s to begin with. I was just trying to include all the SES 5s and above, and just using. I wanted to use, because if you have like, it's like, hey, everything east of Wasatch Boulevard is in this zone. It's very easy to communicate that to a PIO or to fire officials and stuff like that. Whereas like the boundary that I'm ending up with is going to be, you know, running through about 15 different streets on center lines, and that's just okay. But, you know, there's a political balance to it as well, you know, and also like in this specific example, these people have been put into a floodplain in the last 5 years. They've been now put into the high risk mapping. They've now been, it's just like, just mitigating some of like the pain of going like, we understand that like there's a lot going in. So like, we'll try to like be as.
There's been some alluvial fan stuff there too.
Yep.
Good old Milk Creek. What's his name? The legislator, I can't remember his name. Taking offense, but yeah.
They added a new fault back in over there in 2020. Yeah, so all those people are really happy with like just government in general. And so just trying to make it at least kind of palpable for them of saying like, yeah, you definitely live in this country. And if you feel, and I feel good because out of like the 10 houses that I kind of picked to fill out the appendix on, out of the random 861 structures that were in there, all of them were 120 on the scoring or above. So it was just like, all of you are going to have to do some defensible space stuff just to even bring yourself down into the range to avoid using the craziest building, the craziest classification. Oh, we have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I got one. So just real quick, I'm just trying to figure out. So when you did your focal statistics, what radius did you use?
So in the zonal statistics, I actually just used the parcels. So you can take polygon features and you can then add it in, sorry. So it'll actually give you the majority SES score per parcel.
Okay, so you didn't necessarily create like a 250 or 500 meter kind of moving window analysis. You're able just to use the parcels.
No, yeah, I just
You
used
get the means.
I just used the parcel level. I had access, or I pulled down the image servers for like the 250 meter polygons, the generalized polygons for the SES 7 and stuff like that. I ended up getting the same kind of almost boundary as that, just by doing it at the parcel level.
Okay, cool. And we're looking at like maybe making a smoothed SES. Would that have helped you if we would have provided that?
No, I actually, in retrospect, I kind of wish it was more fine grained, but I don't know. I think I might have made a mistake by reclassifying it and not just getting it to like the finest grain possible and then saying, okay, well, I need to just find the break point. But the break point was already kind of defined at a 7, so I was like, I should probably just stick with that.
Mhm. Yeah, until you were using those floating points to get the means.
So I was using the floating points I reclassified the floating points to the actual 1 through 10, and then used that in zonal statistics.
Okay, that makes more sense. Cool, thank you. Yeah, Sevier County has also produced one of these, so I'm just kind of slightly different, but you guys look like you have roughly the same process. So very cool.
Initially, before Tommy, before all of this, I was going to just take because it was not clearly defined to me. I thought the classifications on the building stuff was like, ironically, 5, 6, and 7 of the structure scores. So it's like, oh, if it's class 1, it's a 5, class 2, 6, class 3, the extreme classification would be a 7+. And then once that was not true, I was like, I don't really want a raster that bleeds parcel lines or a polygon that bleeds parcels. Because it just intermixes in between houses.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, I guess I would just say you would have to intersect it really well, I think, to make it look okay.
Yeah, very cool though. Good work on that. It's pretty impressive.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. I think we'll head back over to this meeting. Yeah, me. Back over to me. And I am going to talk pretty quickly today just about the Empower program. At the last UMETT quarterly meeting, I kind of mentioned it in passing and people were like, wait, what's that? I'm definitely not the expert in Empower, but I've dabbled. And so I was going to bring what I know to you guys and some of the resources and links that I have found and that might be useful to you. On this slide, I have a couple of links. The first one is a link to our UMETT hub site, and there's a new resource kind of page, and this specific page is about Empower data, so you can find most of what I talk about in the presentation today linked there. And then where I got most of that information from is the actual federal data set. And I'm going to be talking a little more about our hub site resources page after this presentation. So in a nutshell, Empower is a data set produced by a partnership between 2 federal agencies, the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, as well as like Medicare, Medicaid. And the purpose of this data set is to aid in planning and response, specifically for at-risk individuals that are dependent on essential healthcare services and or electricity-dependent medical devices. So there are 2 separate data sets within this, and they are the emergency planning data set and the emergency response outreach data set. And I think that those titles really give you a sense of what they are for. One of them is for planning, it's aggregated, and the other one is more specific. So the emergency planning data set, I have a couple of links here. The main thing that I wanted to show is this interactive web map that they have. I found it to be pretty comprehensive, especially in the detail about the data, which is nice because that's not very common. So I can filter it. You can filter it by geography. You can do a county or a zip code. I don't know what. Okay, I guess we're doing Rich County. And you can also have like what specific at-risk population data set you want to display. And I'm not going to dive into this very much. I'm not an expert on this tool, but I just wanted to show you kind of what's available there. There's also a REST service available for people who want to ingest this data into their own systems. And they have created a nifty Empower AI like helper for like learning about this data, and I think even using it. I have not used it, but I was reading some of the documentation on it. It's linked on their site, and so I wanted to link this here as well. And then down below, I just have some examples that they shared of people who have used this data set. So like where you might want to use it, mostly for like training and exercise, for the planning data set, training and exercise, planning purposes, let's see, prepare for and respond. It's all planning stuff really in these examples, but you can take a look at what states are using them. So the other data set, the other component of this is the emergency response outreach data set. Not as many links because this data set contains very specific patient information, like names, what their medical needs are, their address, like their phone number. So obviously this data is not shared broadly. There's some, in some of the links that I put at the beginning, there's also more information about this data set, but obviously you can't access the data easily. Let's see. Okay. But we do kind of facilitate some interaction with this at the state. There are a lot of steps in order to get access to this, but basically it has to come through your local health department for a specific incident. Like there has to be an emergency declaration at the local or county level or something. The local health department coordinates with the state Department of Health and Human Services to who like manage the data. And then we at the Division of Emergency Management have a partnership with DHHS to kind of present this data in a dashboard that we host within our enterprise when the data is available. And we populate the data that fills out for like different counties or regions, and we give access according to who's allowed access based on the local health department. So it kind of all comes back to the local health department here. But as you can see, it is very specific data. Like you can click on an individual and see all of their information. You can zoom into like a fire boundary and see who's like right on the edge and just click on them and see their information. So the intention of this dashboard is really for like response coordination, response planning. On this previous slide, there's a lot of states that have used this data set specifically for conducting outreach to at-risk individuals, like without power, or like a hurricane is coming or a severe storm. So they're kind of prioritized in terms of like getting a generator to, or that kind of thing. Yeah, and the other thing I want to note about this data set is it expires. So right now, all of the declarations have expired. We do not have the data populated in our enterprise. So whenever an incident happens, it is a mad rush to geocode up to 60,000 addresses. And yeah, as quickly as possible for response, because there's for the whole state, I think in the summer when we were doing this, it was 57,000 addresses, and they're like, we need it yesterday. So that's something that we get to do urgently at the state sometimes, is populating this dashboard, allocating accounts to viewers who need it from our enterprise. All right. that is all I have on Empower, because like I said, I'm not an expert, but if you have questions, I'm happy to try and answer them, or I definitely have some contacts that could potentially answer them for you if I can't. So, any questions on Empower?
Has this been used yet in Utah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, many times.
Mhm. Yeah, especially in our like wildfires this
Yeah.
summer, that like we had to do the whole state and we were allocating accounts to a bunch of different counties. We didn't end up doing every county. Well, I mean, we had every county ready to go,
Yeah.
but we didn't end up allocating accounts for every county.
Yeah. I just remember there was like generators in central Utah because of the Monroe Canyon going on. So it was like that one transmission line feeds. I don't know how many counties. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yep. I helped, I didn't create the map, but I definitely saw a map for the transmission line, like service areas at one point, and it was crazy. All right.
Wooden poles.
Yep. If there are no questions on Empower, then I'm gonna switch gears a little bit into UMETT updates. So over the past few meetings, I know that I've been kind of pushing our new UMETT hub site, and we're slowly kind of building the capabilities of this site. The QR codes here, and something to note, if you have visited and saved the hub site in the past, the URL has changed because it used to be UMETT-test-Utah. So we removed the test. So if you had bookmarked it, rebookmark it. And then I was just going to open it up and show you some of the things that we've been working on. In particular, so this is what it looks like. I want to show you guys the resources page though. This is not complete. However,
Julia, share the tab for.
thank you. Thank you. There we go. So this was the home page, goes online, resources page. So it's not complete, but we have kind of the bare bones framework set up for a bunch of different emergency management topics. And the idea here is to have kind of a one-stop shop. I know that's been overused, but just the kind of like linking out to other resources, information, how-to documents, tutorials, case studies, presentations on all these different topics. So if you need to create a map, an incident map, or you need to use the Empower data, or you want to learn about critical infrastructure, you can come here and it'll have like some little summaries and then links to other resources. So for example, the Empower page has been mostly completed. So you see like summary, how like kind of overview document, some links to other resources. And then we have incident maps has been populated. So Emma did some damage assessments, and I do want to give a shout out to Emma, actually, my colleague Emma, who has helped me a whole bunch in the formatting and getting this all kind of set up really nicely. Let's see, we've got some information on situational awareness. I've started to add Braden's information to the critical infrastructure page, but a lot of this has content coming soon because there's nothing in there yet. But that is where I'm really hoping that I can have a call to action with the UMETT group, because there's a lot of knowledge throughout this group, and I want to be able to leverage that, and I want to kind of share it, break down silos, and people have different perspectives and different experiences. So if you would like to help out with this, I've tried to make it as easy as possible. And you can go into click the suggestion box on the hub site. It's in a million places on the hub site. And just basically add, you can add links, you can add, just a stream of consciousness about one of the topics if you really want. You can add files, whatever it, like, I wanted a low barrier to entry for adding content to this site, but if you want to get more involved with kind of curating the content for one of these pages, let me know. And I can try and get you access to the hub page where you can just update it directly. So let's see, back to this tab instead. Yeah, like if you click on any of these pages with content coming soon, oh, not that one. I didn't add it to that one. That was the last one. Evacuation areas. I added the suggestion box. It's at the bottom. It's everywhere. So please give us your, like, I want to collaborate more within this group. And so I'm really hoping to do that with this. Back to the presentation. All right. Are there any questions on the hub site or to the UMETT team in general? Yeah.
You guys are doing great.
Something like that.
Only somehow. I'm redoing an experience builder right now, and I just wanted to shoot myself.
Throw the computer like out the window.
It used to never be this bad. The web app builder was never this bad.
The new hub builder is horrible.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording. And thank you all who joined online. And also thank you to those who are watching this later, because I know that there's a bunch of people who emailed me saying like, I can't make it. All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas, happy holidays.
Stop the recording.
Oh, I thought I did.
Because if you leave, I'm